You've seen the headlines and the TikToks.
Millennials are mocked for their side parts, and Gen Z is called out for their slang. It feels like we're caught in a constant low-grade war over fashion, emojis, and who is the most out of touch.
But what if these generational battles are missing the point entirely? What if these aren't just trivial preferences, but deep-seated psychological responses to the vastly different worlds we all grew up in? The truth is, the arguments we have online are just the tip of an iceberg. Beneath the surface are massive historical events, economic earthquakes, and technological revolutions that have fundamentally shaped who we are. And perhaps most importantly, what about the people who don't feel like they belong in any of the standard boxes? What about the generation caught right in the middle? The ones with one foot in the analog world and one in the digital. Who are they, and what does their unique experience tell us about the rest of us? By the end of this video, you will not only know the answer, but you might also understand your parents, your kids, and yourself in a completely new way. The labels we use are flawed. The real story is so much more interesting. Let's uncover the psychology of our modern world. Welcome to a psychological portrait of the modern generations. Today, our goal is simple but profound: to understand, not to blame. Because generations aren't in conflict, they're just responding to the different worlds they were given. We're going to journey from the very last days of the analog world with late Gen X all the way to the first truly digital natives of Gen Z. We will investigate the invisible forces that have shaped our identities. These forces include the economic shifts that defined our opportunities and the technological revolutions that rewired our brains. This analysis will help explain why one group values stability while another values flexibility. It will reveal the origins of the pragmatic skepticism of one generation and the radical transparency of another. And we will solve the mystery of that lost generation we mentioned earlier. Furthermore, we are going to tackle the stereotypes head-on. For instance, we've all heard that millennials are entitled job hoppers. But the psychology reveals a story of survival, not entitlement, and we'll show you exactly why. Our history doesn't define our destiny, but it absolutely shapes our perspective. By understanding that perspective, we can begin to build bridges instead of walls. So let's begin our journey with the generation that stands as the last bastion of the analog age. To understand the world we live in now, we must first look at the world that came right before it. This was the world of late Generation X. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, they were shaped by a unique blend of post-Cold War relief and pre-internet reality. They were the quintessential latchkey kids, coming home to an empty house while their parents were at work. This experience wasn't a tragedy, it was a training ground for independence. They learned to solve their own problems, entertain themselves, and navigate the world with a degree of self-reliance that later generations would rarely need. Psychologists observed that this fostered a deep-seated pragmatism. They saw the idealism of the boomers curdle, and they witnessed institutions from governments to corporations fail to keep their promises. This cultivated a healthy dose of skepticism. They don't trust hype because they've seen bubbles burst before. Think about their social lives before cell phones became ubiquitous. If you wanted to meet your friends at the mall, you had to make a concrete plan. You would pick a time, a specific place, and you simply had to trust that everyone would show up. There were no running 5 minutes late texts, no location sharing, just commitment and trust. This analog world demanded a different set of social skills. As young professionals, many of them watched the dot-com bubble inflate with breathless optimism. They also had a front-row seat to its spectacular collapse in the early 2000s. This event was a defining lesson that innovation and revolution can also be vehicles for hype and financial ruin. It reinforced their innate sense of caution and their preference for the tangible over the speculative. Their worldview is one of cautious competence. They are the bridge between the old world order and the digital frontier. They remember the before times, which gives them a perspective that is increasingly rare. But what about those born just a few years later? So if you don't quite feel like a cynical Gen Xer, but you also don't fully relate to the digital native millennials, there's a very good reason for that. You might be part of a hidden micro-generation, a unique cohort nestled in the gap between these two massive cultural forces. Psychologists and sociologists call them the Xennials. Sometimes they are also called the Oregon Trail generation, a name that perfectly captures their unique position in history. They are the Xennials, born in the analog world, but they came of age in the digital one. This group experienced an analog childhood, filled with scraped knees from playing outside and the meticulous craft of making a mixtape. Yet they also had a digital young adulthood. Their adolescence was defined by the screech and whistle of a dial-up modem connecting to the internet for the first time. They were the first kids to navigate the awkward new world of online social dynamics, from AOL Instant Messenger to MySpace. This dual experience makes them uniquely bilingual. They are fluent in both analog communication and digital connection. Unlike Gen X, they are generally optimistic about technology because they saw it blossom. Unlike millennials, they remember a time before it, which gives them a certain immunity to its worst excesses. Here's a quick test to see if you might be a Xennial. If you made a mixtape on a cassette and later meticulously crafted a playlist on Spotify, you are probably a Xennial. If your very first social network was AIM or MySpace, you are a Xennial. If you got your first cell phone in your late teens or college, and it was a brick you only used for emergencies, you are definitely a Xennial. They weren't burdened by the deep cynicism of Gen X, but they were old enough to avoid the pitfalls of growing up entirely online like millennials. This generation serves as a vital translator in our modern world. They understand the mindset of their analog bosses and their digital native employees. This unique position, straddling two worlds, is their psychological superpower. As we move into the next generation, we see how a different set of historical circumstances created a completely different psychological profile. Now let's talk about the generation that perhaps gets stereotyped more than any other, the millennials. They came of age during a period of unprecedented technological optimism, followed by a period of devastating economic collapse. This whiplash between boom and bust is the key to understanding their psychology. Let's start with the most common stereotype, that millennials are disloyal job hoppers. The myth suggests a lack of commitment or an inflated sense of self-worth, but the psychological and historical reality tells a very different story. Imagine graduating from college around 2008 or 2009, armed with a degree and a mountain of student debt. You were entering the workforce during the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. The stable, long-term careers your parents had were simply gone. In their place was a landscape of unpaid internships, temporary contracts, and stagnant wages. In that environment, job hopping wasn't a sign of disloyalty. it was a necessary survival strategy. For many, it was the only way to gain new skills, find a foothold, or get a meaningful pay raise. Now let's look at the second major stereotype, that millennials are killing industries from diamonds to department stores. The narrative is that they prefer spending their money on frivolous things like avocado toast and travel. But again, this misses the economic reality they inherited. Burdened with historic levels of student debt and facing housing prices that have soared far beyond wage growth, traditional markers of adulthood became unattainable for many. Millennials didn't kill the diamond industry. An economy that denied them assets did. They shifted their spending from assets to experiences, not because they were frivolous, but because memories were an asset that couldn't be foreclosed on. This created a generation of what can be called pragmatic idealists. They are idealistic in their desire for meaningful work and a better world, but deeply pragmatic about how to survive in the economic system they were handed. Following the millennials are the first true digital natives, Generation Z. This is the first generation to have no memory of a world before the internet was always on, in our pockets. They didn't have to adapt to social media. It was simply the air they breathed from their earliest years. This constant connectivity created a very different psychological landscape. While millennials curated the perfect life on Instagram, Gen Z grew up watching those polished highlight reels. As a result, they developed a powerful allergy to anything that feels fake, overly produced, or inauthentic. Their driving force is a search for authenticity. This explains their preference for platforms like TikTok, with its chaotic, unpolished, and often bizarre trends. It's a direct rebellion against the picture-perfect aesthetic that dominated the 2010s. They are also digital pragmatists. Having witnessed financial crises and social upheaval through their screens, they are highly aware of social issues and deeply skeptical of traditional institutions and brands. They value transparency and expect the brands they support and the people they follow to have clear values. Furthermore, their relationship with online identity is far more fluid. They grew up with avatars, usernames, and multiple profiles across different platforms. This has led to a fascinating paradox. For Gen Z, online anonymity isn't about hiding. It's about being more truly themselves than they often feel they can be offline. The internet is a laboratory for them to experiment with facets of their identity in a way previous generations simply couldn't. Their search for authenticity in a digital world is their defining psychological quest. But now it is crucial that we pause and address an important truth. Now let's get real for a second. It is very easy to listen to all of this and start putting everyone you know into neat little boxes. But these generational labels are meant to be frameworks, not cages. They are tools for understanding tendencies, not for defining individuals. The reality is that our experiences are also profoundly shaped by other factors. Things like geography, social class, family values, and subculture create immense variation within any single generation. A millennial who grew up in a rural community without reliable internet access will have a different worldview than one who grew up in a dense urban center. So the actionable insight here is not to use these labels as a final judgment. Instead, use them as a starting point for empathy. Instead of thinking, "Oh, you're such a Gen Zer," try thinking, "I wonder what historical forces shaped their view of the world." This subtle shift in perspective can change the entire dynamic of a conversation. It moves us from judgment to curiosity. And curiosity is the engine of understanding. If any of this is making you feel seen or understood, that's the whole point of this channel. We believe that understanding is the first step toward connection. So if you want more deep dives like this, please take a moment to subscribe. It genuinely helps us make more content that matters. So today, we've journeyed from the analog pragmatism of late Gen X to the digital authenticity of Gen Z. We've seen how the independent latchkey kids gave way to the bridge-building Xennials. We've reframed the survival strategies of the economically disrupted Millennials. And we've explored Gen Z's profound quest for authenticity in a hyper-curated world. Through it all, a clear thread emerges. History and technology are the invisible hands that sculpt our collective psychology. Generations aren't in conflict, they're just responding to the different worlds they were given. That hidden generation we spoke of at the start, the Xennials, they weren't truly lost. They were just waiting for the right map to find their place on it. And perhaps that is true for all of us. We are all trying to find our place on a map that is constantly being redrawn by time and innovation. Understanding these different maps is the first step to navigating our complex world together. Hopefully, this video has given you a slightly better compass. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more content that helps you make sense of the world, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications. Your support allows us to tackle these complex subjects with the care they deserve.